Yo, what's going on? So in today's video, we're gonna be going over exactly how to build out the ideal post-workout meal for basketball players. So if you're looking to recover maximally from every single workout, get the most out of it, and bounce back to train the next day just as hard, watch till the end of the video. What's going on? Welcome back to another video here on the channel. My name is Tommy Clark. I'm a certified nutrition coach, and today we're going to be discussing how to build out the perfect post-workout meal for basketball. So what should you eat after you train to maximize recovery and make sure that you're getting the most out of that workout that you just completed. And I actually made a video going over the ideal pre-workout meal, so what to eat before you train, about a week ago. So I'll link that up somewhere here on the screen so you can go watch that. And I would recommend watching that real quick and then coming back here to learn the second part of that. Because if you have your pre-workout meal, you have your post-workout meal, then you're going to be in the ideal scenario to maximize your performance during your training and maximize your recovery after. And that's like the best of both worlds right there. So go and do that and then come back to this video and watch this one. And then as always, if you enjoy the video, if you get value out of it, if it helps you build your own post-workout meal, definitely go ahead and drop a like and subscribe for new videos every single Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, going over nutrition tips to help you take your performance to that next level. And then when we're looking at your post-workout meal, the first thing we're gonna discuss, just like we did with the pre-workout meal, is your timing. So how soon after you train do you need to eat? And there's two camps on this. In the past, it was the supplement companies telling you that you had to eat right after you train or else your gains were screwed. The whole anabolic window idea. And then now we have kind of the opposite of that. And now there's people saying that it doesn't matter when you eat as long as your total daily calorie needs, your protein needs, and your macronutrient needs are met. And the reality is that the actual answer is somewhere in the middle. And that's what we see a lot with nutrition. People love to go to extremes when oftentimes the actual answer that's going to apply to you and actually help you out is in the middle. So you don't necessarily have to eat right after you train, but it's also not a great idea to purposely wait. And for athletes who are trying to maximize recovery and performance, I would actually recommend eating close to when you finish training. So what I tell my athletes is anywhere between an hour or 2 hours is probably fine. The timing of which you use to eat your post-workout meal really depends on the intensity and duration of the workout, as well as did you eat beforehand. If you ate beforehand, you have a little bit more flexibility. It's fine if you wait an hour or two. If you're training in the morning, fasted, you haven't eaten breakfast yet, and the last meal you ate was dinner the night before, then you're definitely gonna wanna get a meal in pretty quickly after you train because you're in that catabolic state. But if you had a meal before you trained, you're probably fine for an hour or two. But really, I'd recommend just getting it in as soon as possible. There's no benefit to waiting. And that's the thing. There's no need to really worry and like stress if you can't eat for half an hour or an hour, or even 2, 3, 4 hours after you train. The anabolic window is more like 5 to 6 hours. But just because that's the case, there's no real benefit to waiting. So if there's no benefit to waiting, why not just eat it right away? And that's typically what I recommend. Eat it as soon as possible, but don't stress too much if like you can't. So if you have something to do, something comes up, it's fine, just get it in when you can. If you're waiting 5, 6 hours after you train to get your meal in, then you're probably gonna run into some issues. But ideally within the hour, as soon as possible after training without stressing about it too much. And then in terms of protein intake with your post-workout meal, it's pretty similar, really exactly the same as what we talked about in the pre-workout meal, that 20 to 40 gram recommendation. And that's gonna help to stimulate muscle protein synthesis, provide your body with the building blocks it needs to build muscle and recover your muscle tissue that you broke down during your training, and really just support recovery. Also, there's some evidence to show that eating protein with carbohydrates actually enhances your body's ability to store those carbohydrates. So if refueling is a priority, and obviously like we'll talk about in just a second, you're gonna be eating carbs with that meal, eating some protein with it has also been shown to enhance your body's ability to absorb those carbs and store them for future use for fuel in your later training sessions. But protein, pretty standard, 20 to 40 grams. I'll toss up that list that I put up in the pre-workout video on the screen right now so you can see kind of what 20 to 40 grams would look like in most cases, like what has 20 to 40 grams of protein. I'll toss that up on the screen right now. And then in terms of carbohydrates, that's the next step. So we got timing, protein, now we're talking about carbs. Just like with the pre-workout meal, this is arguably the most important component of your post-workout meal because you gotta refuel. you just used up your fuel for your training. You used your carbs to create energy to allow you to perform. We talked about that in the pre-workout meal. Now we got to refuel that so the next time you go and train, your fuel stores are topped off. Typically the recommendation for carb intake, again, there's a lot of flexibility here. There's not really a set, like eat exactly this much. I think the recommendation the ISSN gives is 1.2 grams per kilogram per hour for 4 hours after you train. If you did an intense training session, like you went super hard or you played a game or something like that, that recommendation holds up. But if you did like a 1 hour ball handling workout or a 1 hour shoot around where you didn't really break a sweat, you don't need to load up on that many carbs. In general, a good recommendation that kind of holds up regardless of the workout is a 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 ratio of carbohydrates to protein. So go with 3-to-1 if it was a more intense workout. If it was lighter, you still want to get carbs in, you still want to refuel, but you don't need to refuel as much because you didn't burn as much fuel. So if you had a lighter session, go with a 2-to-1 ratio of carbs to protein. If you had a heavier session, go with a 3-to-1 ratio of carbs to protein. And then I'll probably make a separate video going over game day or a post-game meal, because that's going to be a little bit different, not crazy different, but some different nuances there that we're going to want to discuss. Yeah, so the phone started ringing and my dog started barking. So I think what I was talking about last was that a 2-to-1 or a 3-to-1 ratio of carbs to protein will be ideal for refueling you post-workout. And then a kind of overlooked aspect of carbs is actually their ability to enhance your recovery and get you from a sort of amped up state down into a more relaxed, recovery-oriented state. And that's one of the main reasons why carbohydrates are actually very important in the post-workout meal. So obviously they're going to refuel you, but they also help to get you into a recovery state. So for those two reasons, carbohydrates are arguably the most important component of your post-workout meal. And then in terms of fat and fiber, pretty similar recommendations to pre-workout. Now with these two, you don't have to go super crazy with restricting them and kind of cutting back on them like we did during the pre-workout meal, because as we know, they slow down digestion and they can potentially cause some gastric discomfort when you're training, and we don't want that. Similarly here, we want your body to be able to utilize those carbs pretty quickly and store them and utilize them, but we don't really have the need to use them very, very quickly. And there's not really the concern about going and performing another training session. Now, if you were to train later in the day and there was maybe a quick turnaround time, so you had one practice or workout, then you're gonna work out again in 2 hours, then your post-workout meal would pretty much look identical to your pre-workout meal. But in the case that you're training once in a day, or this is your last session of the day and you don't have anything else for the rest of the day, there's no real need to severely limit fat and fiber. But I wouldn't go crazy with it either, because obviously we don't want to slow down digestion too much. And we want your body to soak up and utilize those proteins and carbohydrates that you're eating in your post-workout meal. So in general, with fat, I typically recommend somewhere in the 10 to 15 gram range. So not severely limiting it, but also not going too crazy with it. And then with fiber, it's really your preference. Like I wouldn't load up on the veggies immediately post-workout, but have some color. I would recommend getting some more color in your post-workout meal than you did in your pre-workout meal, because again, those vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, things in those fruits and vegetables are going to be very helpful for your recovery. So I wouldn't cut them out. Just don't go too crazy with them yet. And then for the rest of your meals throughout the day, just have them be balanced, nothing too crazy. And then again, I'll go over some post-game fueling strategies, because those are going to be a little different and kind of extend a little bit longer than that like one meal after you play. So I'll make a separate video going over that, because I know this one's kind of getting a little bit long already, but hopefully that makes sense. So again, just to recap, timing, don't wait super long. Like you don't want to purposely wait, but also don't feel stressed to eat right after. Ideally within an hour or two, you're going to be totally fine. And then make sure you're getting 20 to 40 grams of protein, just like your pre-workout meal, nothing too crazy there. And then with carbohydrates, get either a 3-to-1 or a 2-to-1 ratio of carbs to protein, just depending on the duration and intensity of your session. So if you had a really light session, don't go crazy with the carbs. Don't cut them, of course, you want to refuel, but don't go crazy with them either. Either 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 carbs to protein will be very helpful. And just for the math on that, for example, if you had 40 grams of protein, you would have anywhere between 80 to 120 grams of carbs in that post-workout meal, just to give you an idea of what that math looks like. And then with fat and fiber, again, don't go crazy with them. Not a great idea to load up on them in your post-workout meal, especially if you're training again later in the day, but don't feel the need to restrict them overly. And I would definitely recommend getting some color in. One of my favorite post-workout meals is actually a smoothie. That way, You get protein in, you get carbs in. One of my favorite like kind of secret smoothie ingredients is actually white rice. I've never heard of anyone else putting that in there. I think maybe one other person I talked to was like, oh, I do that too. But it's actually a really, really good ingredient to your smoothie to add some extra carbs and make it easier to hit your carb goal post-workout. My point was, smoothies are a great option for your post-workout meal. So are other just basic meals like the chicken and rice example I used in the pre-workout video. I'm gonna link that up somewhere. Go seriously, if you haven't already, go watch that video. But I talked about how that was my go-to pre-workout meal. That would honestly be my go-to post-workout meal as well. I would just add a little bit more color to it, maybe add some fruit or some vegetables or something like that. But again, not going too crazy with it. I believe that pretty much wraps it up. So as always, if you enjoyed the video, definitely be sure to drop a like, subscribe, because there's gonna be new videos coming out every single Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. And then what I want you to do right now is comment down below and let me know what your go-to post-workout meal is. So what are you normally eating or drinking if you do a smoothie or something like that? What are you normally consuming after you train? Do you have a post-workout meal? Now that you watched the video, what's your post-workout meal gonna be? Just let me know down below, and then drop a like, subscribe, and I will see you for the next video on, what day? I lost track of. We're like, I think a month into quarantine right now, and I've lost track of what day of the week it is. I think it's Monday, or you're gonna be seeing this on Thursday. So I will see you on Saturday for the next video.